So the first thing that you need to know is the workflow and some of the terms we're going to be using. We're going to talk about pad pages. These buttons right here, every time you press one of these buttons, it will change your pads. So this is pad page A, B, C, D, and so on. Each one of them does something different. When it comes to knob pages, we're talking about the screens. You can cycle through the knob pages back and forward. Now there are 19 knob pages as of right now. You can delete as many as you want, and you can rearrange them, and you can rename them also. There's another video in which we show this process. Okay, this is a big one. Shift. We're going to be using shift a lot. The shift button on your machine, that is something that you will not use. Do not use this. Use the one right above that. That is our shift button. Just make sure to always press and hold shift and then turn the knobs or push the buttons to access the secondary function. Now let's talk about the encoder, and it has different modes. When it is on what we call normal mode, that is when you're not pressing shift and when you're not on browser mode. When you are on normal mode, you will use this to select decks. Okay, when you click to the left, you are on deck A, and you can see this on the encoder. The light will be on. When you click to the right, that means you're on deck B, and you can see that right there on tractor. When you go up, you are on deck C, and down deck B. We have loop encoder mode. When you turn the encoder, you will be adjusting the length of your loop. Right there we are on deck A. So for demonstration purposes, we will change the size of that loop. This only applies to the deck that you're on. You push down and your loop is active. You can continue to adjust the size, and when you want to deactivate the loop, just press down again. Let's go to browser mode, push browser, and that will open up your browser layout. By default, when you turn your 4D encoder, you will be scrolling through your tracks on the right side. If you want to navigate your folders, all you gotta do is click that way to the left and go up and down. You can open and close folders. If you want to open a folder, click this way towards you. To close it, go up and go to the right if you want to continue scrolling through your tracks or playlist. Once you find the one you want to load, just push the encoder and it will load it up into the selected deck. On this example, it will be loaded onto deck A. Okay, so when you are using remix deck, you can only control one deck at a time because the knob pages are shared by both remix decks, remix deck C and D. When you press shift, the indicator light, the red one, it turns orange, and this time it points to the right, meaning that you are on remix deck D. If you click to the left, you are on remix deck C. Since we have a remix deck on deck D, let's select D right there. And by the way, this is independent from your focus deck. So see right there, we still have deck A selected. I push and hold shift, go to the left or right, and you are still on deck A. We're only talking about remix deck selection right there. So on deck D, meaning everything I do with my knobs up here will only apply to deck D. Another function of the 4D encoder while you are using remix decks is sample page selection. So your 4D encoder can select sample pages, push and hold the shift button, click up or down. You will scroll through your sample pages on your remix sets. And one thing that you need to know is that you can sort of tell which page you're on without looking at the screen. As you can see there on the top row, the color is a little bit darker, meaning you're on page 1. You scroll down, actually you click down, and you'll be on page 2, page 3, page 4. And we will cover remix decks later on. Other things that you can do with the 4D encoder are adjust the volume. You have to push and hold the volume button and turn the knob. And notice how it adjusts the master volume. You can also adjust the swing when you are using remix decks. push and hold swing, and turn the knob. You can also adjust the master tempo. Same process, push and hold the tempo button and turn the encoder. And notice how you adjust the master tempo. If you wish to make smaller increment adjustments, press and hold shift, tempo, and turn the 4D encoder. Again, this only makes adjustments to the master tempo. Now we will talk about the touch strip, and this does quite a bit, so make sure to pay attention or read the manual. You can do several things with this, so let's do that. We need to change to auto tempo. I'm going to press play, and I will show you what pitch does. Pitch mode is on, and notice how the tempo slider. Now this won't happen if that deck is not the master. Notice nothing happens. So let's skip the mod button for now and let's talk about Perform FX Select. This does two things. You can adjust the mixer effects levels and you can select the mixer effects. Let's push the Perform FX Select button and pay attention to Traktor. See how the filter level is being adjusted and it is turned on. When I let go, it turns off. So notice how the filter knobs remained at its last known position. Press and hold shift and then push the Perform Effects button to reset it. And this feature is used on these other buttons as well. Here's a tip on the Perform Effects button. It doesn't have to be a momentary effect. You can leave it on and I'll show you how it is done. Remember, if I let go, it will turn off, right? So if you want it to remain on, do not let go of the touch strip and press that Perform FX button again, and it will stay on. When I turn it off, you have to push the button again and do that. Now, let's talk about mixer effect selection. Push and hold the Perform FX Select button and turn your encoder to select a different mixer effect. We were on filter. Now let's add some reverb. Now let's move on to notes. And notes allows you to adjust the key from the touch strip right there. Notice how the key is changing. It is also a temporary effect. You can let go. Now let's go the other way. If you want to lock it into place, same process we did before with the Perform Effects. Press and hold the notes button and then let go. And it will stay on. To turn it off, press and hold shift and press the notes and it will reset and go back to the neutral position. So let's talk about the mod button. And this is a way for you to temporarily slow down or speed up the deck, similar to what you will do with a record player. So to demonstrate this, we will have to play something on two decks because I need to make one of them out of phase, out of sync. Right there, that's deck A. Correction, that is deck B, which is right now as the master. Let's go to deck A. And notice how they're not synced. Mod is on. Notice the lights on the strip. They correspond to the phase indicator on deck A. So if you want to make sure that it's on phase, just slide your finger across in the direction that you want to go. And notice how the light bar is becoming shorter, corresponding with the indicator on top of the waveform. And now they are in sync. When you're in the middle, that means you're synced. Okay, why will you do this? Well, it does happen sometimes when you do some effects, some performance, some of those really short loops, the track might get out of phase if you don't have your timing right. And this is one way for you to adjust it. Okay, so now let's talk about pad pages. Pad pages are these buttons right here. On the top row, you have pad pages A, B, C, and D, and those corresponds to track decks A, B, C, and D on this side. Meaning when you're on pad page A, when you press play, it will only affect deck A. Same thing for B, C, and D. The ones below do different things. Pad page E is to assign effects. This button. Pad page F is for freeze mode, and pad pages G and H are for remix decks. Pad page G applies to remix deck C. It is directly below deck C. And pad page G applies to remix deck D, which is directly below deck D. Okay, so let's go over some of what these lights mean right here. On your manual, you can see what each button does and the different layers that you have. This is your play pause button. The one to your right is Q. This is flux mode, and this is reverse mode. Reverse mode is just a temporary button. The moment you let go, it turns off. So this row right here, the second and third row, these are your hot cues, and the colors will match whatever you have on your track. The white one stands for your grid cue right there. And just be aware that some tracks do not have that, especially now with Traktor Pro 4. If you didn't analyze or have a grid cue set, this will be left blank. So do not panic. That just means it's like that set up on your track. So the blue ones are for your regular hot cues. This orange one is for your fade ins. The yellow is the load. Green is loop. And the darker orange is your fade out. There's some loop mode. You can delete hot cues by pressing and holding shift, touching the one that you want to delete, and when you let go, it will be off. Let's erase that loop cue right there. So remember how we talked about shift adding a secondary layer of commands to this mapping? Well, this also applies to your pads right here. For example, let's zoom in let's go to the manual. Your play pause button, you don't need to press shift for anything. Same thing for Q. This button right here, the reverse path, will become now your sync. And look at deck A, sync is off, sync is on. If you want to make deck A your master, press this button, which what would normally be your flux. And right now it doesn't show us on because you are on auto master. If we start playing, this will become the master. Right there. Okay, so let's talk about the buttons right here at the bottom. This bottom row right here, these are your loop and jump. This is your loop on button, and when you activate it, it will turn this one on. So let's demonstrate. The red button, that means you have a loop actively on. Press it and it'll turn it off. Just loop it. This is just the size. Remember, you can use the encoder. Let's make it a 4 beat loop. You can also adjust it from right here by accessing the secondary layer. Press and hold shift. This button decreases the size of your loop, and the one to the right will increase it. If you want to loop jump, it's these two right here. This goes to the right, this goes to the left. Let's go backwards. Oh, I accidentally turned it off, so beware of that. Let's go backwards. Let's go all the way. I'm gonna go forward. When you press and hold shift, the loop jump buttons become beat jump. Right now, it will move depending on the size of your loop. If you have a 2-step loop, when you press and hold shift and go to the right, it will move on 2 beats increments. If you make this a 32 step loop, it will jump in 32 steps increments. Now, we added a third layer to this mapping. Since Traktor 4 now has a pattern player, we decided to add some indicator lights right here that will let you know which steps are currently active on the pattern player. Now, to demonstrate the third layer, I will add 4 FX units. So as you can see, FX unit 1 is a pattern player and the rest are regular FX units. So let's say you're playing your track and you start playing a pattern right there. Okay, let's just stop the track from playing, but let's leave the pattern player on. You don't see what's going on really. I mean, you have to rely on your ears to see which steps are active. Right? You don't know what's going on. Even Traktor doesn't show you that. So we came up with a clever way to show you this. And this is shown on the pad pages on the third layer, which is pattern. All you gotta do is press this button that conveniently says pattern. And right there you have your pattern player. Let's switch patterns. And see how the lights match what's going on with the pattern player. And we will cover this later on. And this pattern button is just temporary. So you let go and it goes back to your regular deck view right here. So let's say that you want to work with just pattern players and you don't want to be holding this button right here all the time. We decided to designate another button that would lock it onto pattern player mode. So let's demonstrate that. Right there you have your pattern player going. Same pattern. And you press the lock button, it will lock the pattern player view. Okay. You can add more steps. So let's talk about pad page E, which is your effects assign page. When you select pad page E, this lets you know which effects units are active and which ones are assigned to each one of the decks. There are 4 quadrants right here. The top left is deck A, top right deck B, bottom left deck C, and bottom right deck D. When you press this button, that turns on FX unit number 1 for deck A, FX unit number 2, deck A, number 3, deck A, number 4, deck A. You can see this on Traktor's display. And look at the colors. They indicate what type of FX unit you are using. This one, the mint green, stands for pattern player, and the orange ones are FX units. Now I will use my mouse just to change the type of effect unit on effect unit number 2. I want you to notice how this will change colors. I will make this one right here. I will assign a pattern player to it, and the color has changed. If I were to change effects unit number 1 to a single or group, it will turn orange. So the same thing applies to the other decks right there.